The distortion is great. So far, I'm pretty blown away. Today, I want to find out if a modern transistor distortion rig can replace a tube amp. Let's go. Transistor distortion, boys and girls. Transistor distortion, the ugly little brother of tube distortion. Don't we all know that? You know, back in the days, nobody who could afford a real tube amp went for a transistor amp. And, you know, nobody who wants a rich and complex and sophisticated high gain tone is not using tube distortion. You know, that's just, that's the rule number one of heavy metal guitar tones, you know. Don't go transistor if you want to sound good, if you want to sound beautiful, if you want to sound expensive. Don't get me wrong, I'm also using transistor distortion, but not if I want to sound beautiful. I mean, look at, I even came up with this ugly sounding pedal. You know, this is an HM2-ish pedal. So if you're into Boss HM2 distortion, you know, you don't want to sound beautiful. It's a fucking chainsaw. So if you want a fuzzy and dirty and fucked up distortion, get a GRINDSTEIN, get an HM2. Transistor distortion works here, and I even like the metal zone for certain things. I like the rat pedal. There are a lot of classic pedals that just work. But if I want to have that rich and lush tone, I'm using these amps. But what makes transistor distortion sound bad? It's hard to explain. There's a certain hardness or stiffness in the distortion. So yes, the distortion is tight, and yes, we have enough distortion, but I feel like something in the dynamics and something in the overtone structure always sounds a little cheaper compared to tube distortion. It feels like the balance between the root frequency of the note you play and the overtones coming because of the distortion are a lot more simple compared to tube distortion. In tube distortion, it just feels like you have a whole rainbow of harmonics, whereas transistor distortion, you know, sounds a little more German. Sounds a little more German. That's the perfect description. And, you know, it always feels like you're hitting the roof somewhere. Tube distortion feels more elastic, feels more open, so to say. So that's how I would describe the typical difference between the two. If you don't believe me, let's have a listen and compare a tube setup, a tube amp, to the most typical cliche transistor sounding pedal on earth, the metal zone. But you know what? The times have changed. Transistor distortion is not what it used to be back in the 90s. Those modern JFET distortion, you know, it has become a lot better. So I've been searching for a transistor distortion that can do high gain metal tones. And I wanted to avoid any tubes in the signal path. You know, no tubes at all. So preamp distortion, power amp as well, no tubes at all. And I wanted to find something that can replace a real tube amp. And that was a pretty long journey, and I'm just showing you a shortcut today because I found a setup that sounds pretty fucking amazing. I have to say that. Sounds really good. So let me show you what I'm talking about. I was testing a lot of pedals, I think 7 pedals, and some were okay. I'm just gonna show you the cool one. Some were okay. One was, let's talk about the worst one. That was the Bogner Überschall pedal. Lieber Herr Bogner, that pedal is not good. I mean, the Überschall amp is nothing but great, but that pedal kind of looks cheap and voiced way too dark and undergain, and not a good pedal. But let me show you what I found. I found this pedal. This sounds pretty fucking amazing. It's the REVV Gen4. I still haven't checked out any of the Rev amps. I should do that, I think, because this, wow, really good. And you've already seen this thing in, I think, 2 of my videos. The Seymour Duncan, what is it called again? Powerstage 200. I have been using this to create all of my IRs. Also for my EMINENCE IR pack. By the way, check out the link below. To my EMINENCE IR pack. Buy it and make me rich and famous. So this is a power amp with 200 watts, no tubes at all, and we're gonna combine those two and let's see what they can do and let them, you know, compare them with a tube amp. Let's see what happens. It's time to get the final answer. Let's compare a complete tube rig to a complete transistor rig. I know that this transistor rig sounds fantastic. I just haven't done any real A/B tests, so I'm curious myself. But let's talk about the tube rig first. This is one of my favorite amps, the Brunetti Extra Lead. And right now I'm not playing a boost. We're going straight into the amp. We got a Mesa Boogie 4x12 cab down there with 2 microphones on a Vintage 30 SM57 plus Beyerdynamic ribbon mic. What is it called? M160 or something. The settings on the amp, the presence is pretty wide open as usual. I've just added a touch of treble. Sounds like this. I just love that amp. Let's add a tube screamer. But can we get a sound like this without any tubes? Let's find out. So I can switch here to our transistor setup. So we're going from the guitar into the rev pedal, into the Seymour Duncan power amp, and of course we're using the same cab and microphone setup. So let's switch. So everything is at noon right now, and we can hear it sounds too dark. A little flat, a little boring, but hard to judge. So let's add some presence on the power amp. Maybe some treble. A lot better. Let's switch back to the tubes. Yeah, the transistor setup sounds a little tighter. Do we need more bass? I think so. But it sounds great, right? Back to the tubes. The tubes have a little more of that overtone rattle, or is it just because I know it? Yeah, we need a little more. Also, the transistor setup is a little The mids on the Brunetti just feel a little more linear or something. Let's scoop the mids a little bit on the pedal. But the distortion is great. So far I'm pretty blown away, because the frequency spectrum is more or less the same now. Of course, it's a different distortion, it's a different amp, you know, so it's not gonna sound entirely the same, but I don't really see a difference in quality. Let's do the next test. Play something like this. This is where you can hear the tubes sing, where you can hear the complexity of the overtone. Transistor. Here it sounds a little cheaper, just a little cheaper. The fundamental note seems to be a little more prominent. And we don't have the same rattle in the overtone. Sounds cleaner, sounds more simple, less complex compared to the tubes. I love that rattle. I'm glad I found a difference because I need excuses to, not to sell my tube amps. This sounds great. The transistor for solos is a little flat. I still have that feeling of like hitting the roof a little bit. But don't get me wrong, I'm impressed. I'm fucking impressed with that setup. It's unbelievable, especially, since most of the time I play stuff like I can make a record with this setup. Fucking amazing. I mean, look at that setup. A portable setup like this. Unbelievable. That little red thing doing all the distortion, and then that little silver box there. And that thing is truly loud. It's driving a 4x12, and that room over there, it's really shaking, Incredible. If you play shows, all you need is whatever cab you want, and then you need a little IR player. You send a signal to the front of house guy, and there's your sound. And it's all analog distortion. So, officially, this is the best transistor setup that I have heard. Hats off, or beanies off, to both REVV and Seymour Duncan. Good work. Is there a reason to get rid of your tube setup? Almost, I have to say that. You heard the difference, especially if you play higher notes and where the overtones sing. I can still hear a difference. I hope you could also hear it. I don't know. When you're playing yourself, it's sometimes easier to hear it. I hope you could hear that. Okay, but let's find out if we can furthermore improve the sound of the transistor setup if we just use the rev pedal and send it into the power amp of the Brunetti. And I will try to adjust the presence so we get the same sound. I can't switch on the fly, so I'm gonna reamp a riff and some higher notes, and we can A/B between those setups. Let's do that now. Wow, so this gets even closer to the real thing, to tubes. It's impressive. I'm pretty blown away. But you know, it took me quite some time to find a transistor rig that actually works. So not all of the modern pedals are as good as this setup. Yeah, but if you're looking for something portable, analog, and pretty sexy looking, this setup might be for you. So check it out. Let me explain one last thing. Let me explain why I play this thing into a power amp straight. The first reason is I want to avoid any tubes, and that's the easiest way to avoid any tubes. The other reason is if you get distortion pedals, you should always check if they sound better into a clean channel or into a power amp, because that's a big difference. And for example, this pedal doesn't sound good into a clean channel. I've tried it. I'm not going to show you because it sounds terrible. And this one is supposed, I don't know if it's supposed, it just sounds, if you use your ears, it just sounds way better if you play it into a power amp. It's like a full-blown preamp and sounds great for that purpose. What's the difference between pedals that go into power amps and go into preamps? It's the voicing. A pedal that goes into a power amp needs to be way brighter. It needs to be way brighter. That's why we added so much treble to our Oh My God pedal. So just to make it like versatile enough to be played both into a preamp, which is the original idea, and if you crank the highs, into a power amp. So most pedals sound way too dull if you play them, way too dark if you play them into a power amp only, if they are intended to go into a preamp, which is gonna add a lot of harmonics and make the sound brighter. This one, on the other hand, once again, sounds lovely into a power amp and not good at all into a clean channel. So always make sure you double check what sounds better before buying a pedal. Once again, it's about time to tell you to subscribe to this channel and ring the bell so you don't miss any videos anymore, right? And leave some comments. Tell me how you like this. Tell me what pedals you are playing, and if you have compared them to tube distortion. Follow me on my socials. Leave some comments. My email list is below. Yeah, please subscribe to my email list. I'm trying to do one beer with cola video just for the people on my email list every week, and I hopefully will go live soon as well. That will be a real party. So, do you want me to go live? You know, everybody needs a beer and then we go crazy. No, we don't do that in Germany. We don't go crazy. No. And we don't make jokes, right? Yeah, that's what they told you. All right, that's all for today. Thank you very much for watching. Thanks for ringing the bell, for subscribing, for leaving a comment. See you in hell, dear motherfuckers. Bye-bye.